For more than 2 decades now, Scott Stokely has competed in sports and entrepreneurship, developing a winning culture in both. He earned 17 world and national titles as a disc golfer during his time as an athlete. He's a lifelong entrepreneur and author who loves to teach. To that end, he's developed himself into one of the top disc golf coaches in the world. He joined me this week to discuss his passion for the sport, its growth, and how his entrepreneurial spirit has fueled his engine in business. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. We began our conversation by Stokely chronicling his championship run in the sport of disc golf.
Yeah, so I started playing disc golf on the world's first permanent disc golf course when it was the only course in the entire world. So I actually was there for the very beginning birth of the sport. Although I was 7 years old, so I wasn't part of that generation of players, but I was there. And I played every day up until the time that I dropped out of school when I was 15, so I could play all day. And went around, and by the 90s, I was touring the country, touring the world, playing tournaments. Not making a whole lot of money back then, but I was living the life I wanted to live. I was traveling, I was free, doing what I love. And then after 8 years of touring, my daughter was born. I took 13 years off and then came back to the sport in 2014 after my life went terribly bad. Failed business, failed marriage, the whole works. And then so I came back to the sport. I've been with it ever since.
And tell me about winning those titles. What went into that experience for you?
So the winning the titles, it just like any other sport. I mean, I was competing against the best in the world. And at the time that I was winning those titles in the 90s, there were somewhere between 500,000 and 1 million people playing worldwide. It was not as big as a major sport, but it was definitely not small. And just as you would expect, I mean, I woke up, I ate right, I trained, I worked hard. I competed in a lot of tournaments where I lost. I had to fail a lot of tournaments in order to win a few. But that was it. I mean, as an athlete, that's kind of the pinnacle of what you're trying to do on the field is to win. The professional world championships, the world singles title eluded me. I got second place in that one twice, but I won 17 U.S. Opens, national and world pairs championships. Every other title in the sport I took home, except for the big one. I got second place twice.
And you tell me that playing the sport has allowed you to travel all over the world to play it. So I'm curious to ask you about where's the most interesting place you've played disc golf, and tell me about your travels playing the sport.
Sure. I got to travel all over Europe, well, Canada, like we said, St. Thomas and Toronto. I got to compete in Sweden, Switzerland, Germany. But my favorite place was Japan. I got to go to Japan a couple times to compete, and it's the most beautiful culture and people, and it was the most unique place. Europe is a lot like America with a different language. It's very similar. Japan is nothing like America. Japan is like the East. And so that was the most fun because it was the most different.
And you describe yourself as a lifelong entrepreneur. So I'm curious if you can dive into that for me. And how do you think your experience in sports has helped you in your entrepreneurial journey?
Sure. So uh, I had to be an entrepreneur because there was no, and there's even to this day, there's not a lot of prize money in the sport. The sport has evolved so far that some players can make $100,000 a year in prize money at the top. But then when you factor in travel and stuff, that doesn't turn into a lot of money. Back in the 90s, there was almost no money in prize money. You know, winning $10,000 or $12,000 a year was a really good year. And that's about what it cost in airline tickets and hotels. So it wasn't about making money on the course. It was about being an entrepreneur and figuring out how to monetize my name and my brand. And that's what I did. I created a lot of, if not most of the business models that players in the sport use today to make money when they tour. So I would do things like, I've now been to more than 500 cities doing throwing clinics where I show up and I stand up in front of the local club and I teach disc golf professional technique, which people pay for. I was the first person to merchandise on the road. So when I hit the road, I had Scott Stokely discs and shirts and hats and bags and towels and all the merchandise I could carry with my name on. I was the first player in the sport to really, not the first to ever do it, but the first one to do it at the scale that I did. I traveled around the country running events. So I've been to hundreds of cities where I would run events, and events are opportunities to make money and sell merchandise. I wrote the first book on how to play disc golf. I wrote the first autobiography in disc golf. I released 3 instructional DVDs on how to play disc golf. And now I am focusing on teaching. I run half day and full day seminars all over the country. I was the first player to have the professional player to have a website selling golf discs. So what I've had to do was not just figure out how to make money what I do, but I had to figure out how to make money in a space where nobody was making money. Like I had to invent the ways to make money. There was no real model before me. I mean, there was in other sports, but not in our sport. But that's been the journey. And by the way, I listed all my successes. I've also had to fail many, many times along the way with ideas that didn't work. So I just listed off all these things to make it seem like I'm a genius. A lot of trial and error, a lot of bad ideas came with those winners.
And how do you think going through that adversity has helped you grow in the sport and as an entrepreneur?
You can't grow without adversity. You can't. I mean, just look at anyone. I can't say anyone. I don't want to generalize, speak on everybody, but I grew up around a lot of people in my community that had money, and the people that had things handed to them, I don't think they evolved and developed the same skills that the people that had to work hard and scratch and claw to get where they're going had. I mean, there's something about having to overcome challenges that makes you grow as a person. It's learning to deal with failure. It's learning to not fear failure. It's learning how to think outside the box. You know, every entrepreneur has the ability to think outside the box. And then as soon as you think outside the box, you have to have the ability to tune out all those other people who don't think outside the box, that do not believe that you'll succeed and feel it's their place to tell you. There's a lot of those out there, the haters, but that's how you mature. That's how you get better at something. You have to dull your sword by using it in order to figure out what needs to be sharpened, right?
Absolutely. And Scott, I'm also curious to ask you about what do they get are the top three things people need to know about disc golf, and how do you that they may not already know, and how do you think we can grow the sport in popularity?
So the three things people need to know about it. Number one is that it's fun. First and foremost, it is the funnest game in the world, based on the growth of the sport over the past 44 years. I think everyone, or the percentages, this is just numbers. I mean, everyone thinks what they do is the funnest thing. We got the numbers to show that a very high percentage of people that play it once say, oh my God, this was fun. I want to keep playing. Number two, it is very affordable. It is a activity you can go out and start with a $20 or $30 starter set, and a mom, a dad, and a couple kids can start for less than $100 the first time out. They can start for less than 50. You can buy one disc each, but 50 to $100 would be the first day out, and then if they want, they don't have to buy another product for the next year, and it's free unless there's park fees or something, or live near a pay-to-play course, but that's going to be a couple dollars. There's nothing to compare to it as far as the cost and what a family can do. And the third thing that people don't, they know, but they don't really know, is that when you go out and play around at disc golf, you typically walk 3, 4, 5 miles on the course. Like, you get a good day's worth of exercise, but it's the best type of exercise because you don't realize that you're exercising. Like, you're out there having fun. You put a little step thing on your hip. You play a round or two of golf. You're like, oh my God, I just walked 9 miles today. And you didn't even realize it, which means it's a sustainable form of exercise. It's not like getting on a treadmill for 9 miles. Yeah, try to do that 4 days a week for the next year. It's impossible. Pretty close.
And you can avoid the gym, right?
You can avoid him. You're outside. Make sure you check for ticks if you're playing up in the woods, if you're up north, right? I mean, you got to, make sure you put on sunscreen. But yeah, you're outside. You're out in nature. You're out with beautiful people. As far as what we need to do to grow the sport, there's nothing we need to do to grow the sport. It's a tidal wave. It's like there's nothing stopping this sport now. There's 15,000 courses, 12 million people. We grew by something like 200 something percent last year. Like that, it's unstoppable right now. Like we are the sport. Like the UFC and disc golf are the two fastest growing sports in the world the last decade.
Stokely says that the sport of disc golf can provide a sense of connectivity and belonging for individuals with disabilities.
Sure. So I created an organization called Blue Power. It's nothing that I've monetized or ever will. You can't send me money if you want to support what I do. There's nowhere to send money to. I don't want anything from anybody. It's just a name for this thing I created to promote adaptive disc golf. And the reason I call it adaptive disc golf, I mean, it is for people with special needs or disabilities, whatever word you call it. In 2 years, that'll be a bad word to call it, right? So adaptive is, I think, the word that can stick. And what I mean by adaptive is the sport of golf. Forget about disc golf, but the sport of golf itself is, I think it's the greatest sport in the world, right? Like, ball golf is a sport that every professional athlete in the world, when they quit their sport, they take up ball golf. So I think golf can make the claim to be the best sport. Disc golf is the same as ball golf as far as sports. You set out, you have an objective, you advance towards a goal, you quantify that goal with a number, you try to compete against your friends, but also you compete against your personal goals and what you did last week, and you get outside in nature and all the things that golf offers, disc golf does. So that's the sport of golf. The reason why adaptive disc golf works is because you can adapt the sport of golf to any skill level. If you have a person with a physical disability, I might throw a 500-foot hole and call it a par three. A person with a disability might look at a hole that's 60 feet long and it would also be a par three. But to that individual, that is exactly the same sport that I'm playing. We've just shortened the hole. They can only throw 30 feet. I can throw a few hundred feet or whatever. It doesn't matter. But it's still a par three for them. They get to play the sport of disc golf, as opposed to another sport where you're competing on the exact same environment. You may find barriers to playing that sport that are hard. Disc golf can be adapted. It can be made more difficult or less difficult, depending on the individual. The other thing is that people of different skill levels can play side by side. It is a parallel sport. So the example I give, I always use the same example. I'm not trying to single out any group, but let's suppose you have two teenagers, and one of the kids in the family has Down syndrome. Those two kids can certainly go out and play tennis with each other. They can go out, they can enjoy the love they have for each other. They can get exercise. They can go enjoy. They can enjoy. One sibling can enjoy teaching the other how to play. Like it's great that they can do that. But the one thing the sibling without Down syndrome isn't really able to do is actually play tennis. Because you have to change the game, you're playing with your kid brother. You're not playing the game of tennis against your kid brother, right? When you play a parallel sport, you're not playing against the individual. You're playing against the environment. You're playing against the score you had last time. You're playing against trying to beat your average, your handicap. So when you play a sport like golf, bowling, archery, darts, you can play side by side with an individual of any skill level, and you could enjoy playing that game full speed, 100%. So if I went out to a disc golf course with you, for example, I can go attack that course as hard and aggressive as I play at a professional tournament, side by side with you, and you can be enjoying the game at the level that you're playing just the same. But I don't change my game to compete against you, air quotes around against. We're both competing against the course. That means we can all enjoy the game at our own level, side by side, in a way that a head-to-head sport would challenge people to have to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I applaud you for opening up those doors of inclusion. And I'm also curious to ask you about you're a guy with a lot of experiences and a lot of stories to share. So I'm curious to ask you, for you personally, what's the best part about living life?
For me, the best part about living life is freedom. I have built my life around being free. Me and my girlfriend, everything we could not take with us in our Jeep, we gave away or threw away, and we took off. We have no storage unit. We have no home base. We just go. We go wherever we want to go, when we want to go. I still work a lot. I mean, we don't have a trust fund. I go around doing these seminars. I'm promoting my businesses. I write books. I work like everyone else, but I work where I work when I want to work. And my life involves freedom. For example, if we're able to, because of COVID, this winter, I want to go spend the winter in Patagonia. So I'm going to go down to South America for a few months, and I want to work on my next book. And I've got some projects to work on that I can do up in the mountains. But to me, life is about not having a box to live in. Because if I decide not to go to Patagonia next week and I decide to go to some other country, if we're able to get in, it's still kind of weird out there, but I can just do that. And that to me is the most important thing I have. I consider it more important than my health. I consider it more important than anything. I can't live in a box and be happy. I have to be free. And that is life for me.
And tell me, where do you think your passion for writing comes from? And when you write a book, what's the overarching message you're attempting to deliver?
Yeah, so I've written co-written 4 books. 3 of them were instruction manuals. So if you want to go out and read those to your listeners, they will bore you. They're not interesting. But then I wrote my autobiography, which actually is only a third of my autobiography. My life has had 3 very distinctive parts. So I wrote the first book of my autobiography for the first part of my life, my first 25 years in disc golf, up to when I retired. The reason I wrote the book, my motivation for it is, from this point forward, since about 2000 and something, every single person in the world, their life will have been chronicled forever. You have social media, you've got digital pictures, everyone's got video. There is no mystery to who this person was. If they accomplish something in life, you'll be able to go on the internet, you'll be able to search for it, you'll be able to find them. Up until this most recent internet age, the majority of people that accomplish things in life have been lost to history, or they're a footnote on a Wikipedia page or in a book somewhere. It was important to me to chronicle my first 25 years of disc golf, but also the history of the sport, and put something in writing. I wanted to make sure that all of the people that I could possibly fit into that book that were part of the history of the sport, that made the sport what it is, I wanted their name in print. And I wanted something that when I was gone, you could look back to and there was some historical record of our existence. And that was the important thing, is to leave a legacy that people could follow, right? I mean, in 1,000 years, there could be 10,000 books written about disc golf in the next 1,000 years. Mine will be the first true story, narrative history of the early days of disc golf. It's going to be the definitive guide. And to be a part of that history, in a weird way, it makes it easier to die someday, knowing that that's going to be there, right? I know it sounds morbid, but it's true. I wanted something left behind, but not just me. I made a list of, even though it's my autobiography, I made a list of all the people that I needed to make sure made it into the book, and was checking them off the list, because they all needed to be able to open this book with their grandkids sitting on their lap and say, look, see right there, see, that's me. I was part of this thing. And I still missed a few people, and I feel terrible about it, but I tried to get everybody in there because I don't want us to be lost to history.
Yeah, absolutely. It's important to be a trendsetter for sure. And I'm curious to ask you this as well. If you had one lesson throughout your life that you wanted to impart on others to make their lives better, what do you think that might be?
Yeah, this was the very first sentence of my book. And I hate having cliches that sound like memes, but I believe this is the largest key to happiness and the biggest thing that prevents people from being happy when they don't do this. And I didn't write this, so I take no credit for this. I don't even know where I read this, so I'm stealing this from somebody else. But first sentence of my book says, "Go where the love is, not where it's supposed to be." And the idea of that is that there's love out there. Everybody can find love. There are people out there that will love you no matter who you are, what you look like, what you do, how many times you've failed in your life, how rich you are, how poor you are. There's people that are going to love you, but it's not always the people that are supposed to. And when you're locked into, well, it's got to be my dad. My dad's the one that needs to love you. Well, maybe your dad's a piece of crap. And maybe your 5th grade English teacher could be a mentor for life. And I'm not trying to pick on dads. I mean, but I'm saying that when you commit to this idea that love has to come from from my family, or it has to come from my boss, or it has to come from my wife or my kids. Sometimes you're lucky and that's where love comes from. But a lot of times people are failed, they're human. And if you instead seek out where the love is, you'll find it. And if you find love, you're going to be okay. So that's my biggest thing I've found, is that people that struggle they're looking for love where it's supposed to be.
Well, Stokely says for him, it's important to leave a legacy where he put actions into motion to positively affect the lives of others.
I want to be remembered as somebody that lived life the way I intended to live it. That nobody laid out a path for me that I had to follow, that I got to make my own rules. And people throw that term around a lot. I did. Like, I've invented everything from how I live my business runs and how I make money to how my relationship is. It's all my way. And that's what I want to be remembered, as an actual individual, not anything but that. But along those same lines, I want people to remember me as someone who always tried to do good, who always gave and always wanted everyone else around them to be happier because they met me.
Yeah, that's certainly a positive ideal to live up to. And Scott, if people are inclined to get connected with you, what's the best way they can do that, Bonnie?
Yeah, so my website, scottstokely.net, is the easiest way. That has links to all social media. But I try to put out 4 to 5 YouTube videos a week on the Scott Stokely YouTube channel. Obviously Facebook, Instagram, but that's all you can find through my website, scottstokely.net. And if I can throw one plug in, my next business venture is I am trying to get my book turned into a movie, my autobiography. So if you have any listeners out there who are filmmakers or budding filmmakers, that can reach out to me. I'm currently seeking. That's my next main venture. So there's my way of plugging myself. That's my next project.
Hey, if we're not shamelessly plugging ourselves, we're not trying, right?
Exactly. I'm an entrepreneur. Like, I would be, if I didn't do that, I would be sending the wrong message to other entrepreneurs.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Scott, I really want to thank you for sharing part of your life's journey and disc golf and business with me. It's most appreciated. Your time, efforts, and insights are greatly appreciated. And I want to thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on the show. Make sure you send me those links. I'll stick some. I'll help put some additional eyes on what you're doing. I'll send some people over to watch